Byron Donalds sits on the House Financial Services Committee. He joins me live from Capitol Hill. Congressman, from your constituent standpoint, do you welcome an interest rate cut, which of course would bring borrowing costs down? Do you welcome it sooner rather than later?
Well, look, I know that my constituents would always welcome that. It would make the cost of capital cheaper, cost of borrowing cheaper. But we're in a tough spot in this Biden economy. The economy is stagnating. Jobs is a very nebulous topic. The last two job reports, you had them actually cut down the number of jobs created in the country down about 200,000, the last two reports. And so we're in this quandary where we are stagnating out as a country. Inflation is still stubbornly high. And I know everybody's looking at the 2% measure year over year, but we are still dealing with prices up massively on working families, on small business owners in the United States. So I think a rate cut is welcomed, but what is going to be the long-term game plan with respect to inflation, number one, but to the growth of our economy, which is the bigger issue? We need to have massive economic growth so that the American people can actually be able to grow their way out of this devastating inflation brought to us by Joe Biden and his radical agenda with Vice President Harris.
Well, let me push you on the timing, because he said, meaning Powell said, that you don't want to wait till 2%. Tomorrow, we are getting the consumer price index number for the month of June. That will give us a sense of consumer inflation, the freshest number, and we'll be looking forward to that. But the timing of a rate cut becomes a little concerning, does it not? I mean, the next meeting is July 31st. That's off the table. September is what people are talking about, but that's just 2 months before the presidential election. And then there is none in October. The next one is November, just a day or two after the presidential election, which who knows if it's going to be decided at that point, if there's some questions about any kind of vote counts, et cetera. So would you say for your constituents, we got to do it by September?
No, I think a rate cut needs to occur when the economy will be able to absorb that and we can move forward as a country. I think to Joe Biden's prospects, I think that stuff's already baked into the cake. I don't think he's winning re-election. Obviously, Donald Trump's going to be the next president of the United States because he's done a terrible job, number one, and now we know he's not capable of doing the job going forward. So I think when it comes to what the Federal Reserve is going to do around interest rates, that needs to be solely focused on our economy, politics, obviously, and I think I'm probably speaking for Chair Powell. They are not going to play into that whatsoever. I think a rate cut's not going to help Joe Biden in any way, shape, or form, because as far as I'm concerned, it's already over for him anyway.
Well, let's follow on that line of questioning. New Jersey Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, Democrat of New Jersey, yes, she is the latest, one of the latest, to join this somewhat growing group, 8 now, of House Democrats who have publicly come out against Biden. Sherrill said the stakes are too high, the threat is too real. They're trying to push President Biden to withdraw. Hakeem Jeffries, according to Politico in the last couple of minutes, said he will tell lawmakers he'll relay the concerns about Biden's electability to the president. That leads to the question, how does the Trump campaign handle this? Because some would say the best thing for Donald Trump is if Joe Biden stays in the race. But if he were to step down and some rising stars in the Democratic Party were to come up, does that not concern you that that might generate some excitement within the party and within centrist voters?
Well, two things there. First of all, rising stars in the Democrat Party. If you look at their policy agenda, those aren't rising stars. There's a lot of dim bulbs over there because the agenda remains the same regardless of who they pick. Now, to actually what they're going to do, Joe Biden is their nominee. The voters voted for him. They set up a primary process that was in name only. They squeezed everybody else out to protect Joe Biden. The only reason why you have these Democrats on Capitol Hill now complaining very quietly in the corridors of Washington is because they're concerned about their reelection prospects, not about the American people, not about their catastrophe of an agenda, not even about whether Joe Biden makes it or not across Election Day on November 5th. They're concerned about themselves. And so what people are seeing is the selfishness that does happen with politicians on Capitol Hill when everybody's thinking about how are they going to get reelected. That's why you have these members coming out, because they all knew that Joe Biden was not capable of doing doing this job. They all knew about what was happening with his mental condition. They did not care to talk about this until it was exposed for the entire world to see. So that's their problem. Unfortunately, this is what the Democrat Party has brought for us, but there's not a lot of stars over there, I can tell you that.
Well, you know what's gotten lost in the shuffle of these shiny objects and these exciting moments or depressing moments about whether Joe Biden can even stay in this race is actual policy from either side. Now, the GOP just put out the platform. RNC, it's on the website. There are 20 bullet points, and among them, I'm just picking out some: seal the border, end inflation, large tax cuts for workers, strengthen and modernize our military. Many Americans would absolutely agree with some of this. One thing that my team and I found missing, and it has a huge investment component because people are watching healthcare costs, and it's a plan for universal healthcare. Nothing on here is about that, and yet, and I've got two Wall Street Journal, this is yesterday and today, two huge headlines about all kinds of crazy costs. We can put these up on the screen here. Medicare paid $50 billion to insurers for patients who were never treated for diseases that Medicare paid for because there was fraud. I mean, who knows what was going on? And then pharmacy benefit managers, these are the middlemen between the insurers and pharmacies, steering patients away from less expensive medicines. What is the GOP plan for covering all the uninsured in this country, of which there are at least 25.5 million, and 43%, Congressman, of working adults are underinsured? What's the GOP plan?
The reason why we have an uninsured crisis in the United States is because when the Democrats passed Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, they did not take into account that when you overregulate health care, you are going to rise prices across the board. Deductibles are up, premiums are up, and then with the higher inflation, people are having to make a decision now. Do I put food on the table or do I have an insurance policy? Very unfortunate to talk about it in those terms,
what is the
but that's the
plan
reality.
For
now,
the
I
RNC?
think the GOP plan is going to be centered around affordability for the American people. What I'm not going to do is step out in front of where the Trump campaign is trying to go with respect to plans on health care, but I will tell you, conversations with my colleagues on the Hill is about affordability first, second, and third.
Okay,
if
are
you
you
can
guys
solve
ready?
affordability, then you go ahead and you can deal with the people who are uninsured.
Let me just ask, are you and your fellow Republican congressmen willing to take on the insurer lobby? Because it is strong.
We are ready to take on any lobby as long as it puts the American people first. And that is why we are behind Donald Trump 100% to be the next president of the United States, because we can't continue the games that have been hurting the forgotten men and women of this country. They are the ones that have to be put first and foremost. Our colleagues are prepared to join the president in that work to get it done for the American people.
Would you say yes to being his vice president? I bring that up because your name has been mentioned.
Oh, of course I would. Look, I would say yes to that, but President Trump's going to decide that probably sometime over the next couple of days. And look, I look forward to his decision because that's going to solidify our ticket that we're going to unify around as a party, and we're going to go win back the White House and win back the Senate and keep the House.
We will watch every minute of this between now and, of course, Election Day. Congressman Byron Donalds, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Of course,
thank you. Fox Business will have complete coverage of both conventions, but RNC, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, is first up beginning Monday, July 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it.